What if everything you thought you knew about sex, desire, and self-worth wasn't quite the whole story? This is The Reveal, a podcast about what happens when we ask better questions about the most intimate parts of being human. I'm Elle Chase, certified sexologist and life coach. And every week I invite therapists, sexual health experts, wellness leaders, and cultural thinkers to help us explore the layered and often overlooked space where sexuality, identity, and emotional truth meet. These are conversations about how we heal, how we connect, and how we find real joy and relief in a world that doesn't always make either easy. Curious? So am I. This is The Reveal. Oh, and just a heads up, sometimes when I forget a word mid-sentence, I jokingly substitute it with the word vagina, even if it doesn't make sense. It's a habit, but honestly, it makes me laugh, and hopefully you too. This episode was sparked by a quote from psychotherapist and writer Esther Perel that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "Sexuality is the instinct, it's nature, it's the base, but eroticism is what gives sex meaning. Curiosity, imagination, creativity, those are the essential ingredients of the erotic." Well, it made me wonder, how often do we confuse sex with eroticism? And how often do we chase one without ever touching the other? Today, we're pulling apart the idea that eroticism is just about sex. In truth, it's something much more tender, more wild, more alive. It's the spark of imagination, the surprise of wonder, the thrill of being fully present in your own skin. Sometimes the most erotic moments happen in complete stillness, in a glance, a breath, a moment where you feel deeply connected to yourself or the world without anyone else in the room. This episode is about finding your definition of erotic, outside of performance, outside of expectation. It's about how tuning into that current can make life feel richer and, yes, make sex more meaningful too. Let's explore the erotic, not as an act, but as a way of being. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Cyndi Darnell, a clinical sexologist and certified psychotherapist with over 2 decades of experience in the field of human sexuality. She's the author of the groundbreaking book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, which challenges the myths and mechanics around sexual desire with insight, clarity, and humor. And she's the host of her own popular and fascinating podcast, The Erotic Philosopher. Her work has been featured in major outlets, including The Washington Post, Cosmopolitan, The New York Times, USA Today, and is on Mind Body Green's Top 100 Women to Watch list. Let's get into it. Cyndi Darnell, welcome to The Reveal. Welcome, Cyndi Darnell.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here on a sunny, actually not very sunny Sunday
Not very
afternoon.
Sunday, no.
Warm, but overcast.
Yes, a little tropical, as it were.
That's right.
Well, fabulous to see you.
Fabulous to be seen by you. And I love your off-the-shoulder situation and all your fancy artwork in the background.
Oh, thanks. Cartoons.
Very nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, today we're talking about something that I consider you an expert in. You're my go-to person for anything erotic.
Oh.
And there's so many dirty jokes in there that I'm
filthy.
Not filthy. I'm just not even going to do it.
Oh, all right then.
But
you just did it.
I just did it.
You did it.
All right. So
without doing it.
Fill in the blank, people. Fill in the blank. I might slip and call you my wife. So I should explain that.
Give the people context.
Yeah. The context is Cyndi is Australian, if you can't tell. And
I have been for many years. Despite my best efforts.
Yes, despite her best efforts. And when she wanted to move to the States, I'm like, I'll marry you. Be my wife.
That's right.
And so now we call each other wife.
Yeah.
So,
is that how the whole wife thing started?
It is. Okay. Did you have a different memory?
No. My memory, I mean, I'm not particularly hell-bent on it, but my memory was that when we first met, because we met on the internet.
Yes.
Through Catherine Devaney, my Australian friend.
Yes.
Who used to follow your porn site. And that was how I first heard about you. And then when I came to LA and we met and that we got along immediately. I think to both of our surprise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then my recollection was that it was like, my God, we could be like each other's wives.
Oh, that's
what
great.
I remember.
Okay, I'll go with that. That's a much more romantic idea of what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then, I mean, there was also immigration.
Yeah.
But which for the people listening, we did not end up getting married, and my immigration went perfectly fine.
She's here legally.
Regardless, I am here legally. Just FYI.
Yeah, completely.
Here being New York.
Yes, 100% legal, peeps.
Yes, 100%.
Anyway, so I couldn't think of anyone better to talk about the erotic than Cyndi, and I wanted to bring up this Audre Lorde quote that you have in the beginning of the book, and I'm going to read it. We tend to think of the erotic as an easy, tantalizing sexual arousal. I speak of the erotic as the deepest life force, a force which moves us toward living in a fundamental way. And this is just a reframe of how we talk about and think about sex and build it into our lives, like thinking of it as holistically part of being human. How do you reframe it for yourself, and how do you reframe the erotic for clients that need or want it?
That's a funny question, because I don't know. So, in my work, primarily as a sex therapist and then, a relationship therapist on top of that, conceptually, the erotic is probably not something that comes up in day-to-day conversations with
Interesting.
clients. But they will often speak about wanting to feel more something, and often it's that something that doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a word. People will say, I want to feel more, and then they'll do some hand gesture or make some face,
Right.
And often that what they're looking for is, some kind of oomph, some kind of sparkle, color, something like that. But because of the nature of my work, primarily, around sex therapy and problems with sex and or looking for, inquiry into sex, let's say, people will often not know. They'll start out thinking that they're looking for a solution to a problem. That's what they think they are coming to me for. But it only takes a handful of sessions before all of a sudden they realize actually the problem that they thought they had is perhaps not a problem, insofar as sex, and I talk about this in my book, that sex is not a problem to be solved. It's a quest to be seized, because it is about how you relate to being alive. I think for me, the erotic and eroticism, it's like the opposite of being depressed. Because when one is depressed, one is without, sparkle. One is without color. One is without oomph. One is without many things. And it may be for a period of time. And I'm not talking specifically like about clinical depression. That's a very distinct diagnostic thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, periods that people go through feeling depressed for a couple of months or a couple of weeks or a couple of days even. It's the absence of connection with something that is meaningful, the absence of connection with something that makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. And so the degree to which that comes into people's sex lives varies according to what motivates them sexually, because people have very different sexual motivations. Some people are very motivated by the erotic. Other people are motivated by, abject fucking terror around sex, that if I don't do this, something bad might happen. Or if I do this, something amazing might happen. So in terms of, what it means to me, I go through lots of different iterations of it. And sometimes it's about sex, but often it's really about what is, for me, it's like, is something interesting. I mean, for me, adult eroticism is action with the mind switched on. I think a lot of people go through life performing actions and no cognitive awareness and even interest in what they're doing and why they're doing it. And when I ask clients, what do you think you do that for, or to what end? Like, what do you think's motivating you? Often people will be like, I don't know. I mean, people say that about getting married.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, I'm getting married in September. And I'm like, oh, cool. Why are you getting married? And they're like,
why would you ask that?
Because it's such a strange question, but it's a question I always ask people, or people who are married. I'm like, why did you get married?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a right or wrong reason for why people get married. Like, again, lots and lots of reasons. People tend to think it's because of love, but then when they inquire more deeply, they discover it's often not. It's often something else that's motivating them. So, this is where, for me, the erotic awareness comes into it, is this whole thing about living your life with your mind on. Like,
Yeah.
are you paying attention to what you're doing, or are you just slipping through life, waiting for death,
Right.
paying no mind,
Right.
And if you are paying no mind and you're okay with it, okay, that's fine. But if you're paying no mind and your life feels a bit black and white or bland or beige, that's where it can be very helpful to start paying attention, I think.
I really like what you were saying too. I almost, jumped in and said awake, like, because I know what I find erotic is obviously it can be different from what tons of people find erotic, but it is an aliveness in myself sparked by anything.
Right.
And when I see that in somebody else in a sexual context, it makes it even more erotic for me and it sparks arousal. But I also find some flowers erotic. I find some tableaus with people fully closed very erotic. A look, a glance, something like that. So I think it's just so fascinating how we're built as we grow up in these meat suits that we call our bodies.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, people who will talk about art as having this erotic quality. To me, it doesn't personally, but that's just me personally. I'm a very cerebral person. So for me, a big fat conversation is what gets me excited. So that's kind of what engages me. I'm not so motivated by visual art. I can appreciate it, but I generally don't leave galleries going, whoa,
Yeah.
Whereas if I meet somebody who's just can blow my mind, I'm like, wow, that person's fucking incredible. And that's what sits with me. So, again, but it's about being able to know oneself. What floats your boat? What tickles your oyster? Whatever
Yeah.
the expressions are.
Yeah.
It's, because it is going to be different. I mean, music takes people to those places.
Yeah.
Art takes people to those places. Being in nature takes people to those places. I'm definitely a beachy person. I do really, I mean, I don't know that I'm constantly kind of frisky at the beach, but I certainly feel more frisky at the beach than I do in the city, even though I love New York City. And I used to feel frisky in New York City. I don't so much these days. Maybe I'm starting to turn into a real New Yorker. But the beach I can feel like here where I am at the beach, everything just feels a bit more sparkly.
Yeah.
And just the salt in the air. But it's also, I think maybe everyone's walking around semi-nude and it's a lot more flesh.
Yeah. Or it's just, that's what does it for you.
Yeah.
Because when I think of the beach, I do think of sand and sand in my underwear and sand in my eye and feeling gritty.
Ooh.
So, it doesn't quite do the same thing for me.
No, I don't think about that. I was just this morning actually having a discussion about my friend's dog took a shit on the beach and then scraped his bum hole on the sand to wipe off the remainder. And then we talked about how that might feel. And I was like, well, we can't judge, but I think there would be few humanoids that would find scraping one's bum hole on sand
in
any way satisfying. But for those listening who may be inclined, absolutely no judgment.
Go for it.
But I'm curious to hear about it, though.
Yeah, exactly. Email and I'll pass it on to Cyndi. It sort of dovetails into the next question, which is if someone's listening and thinking, I don't know what my erotic life even is. I'm interested in finding out. It sounds interesting, but where do I even begin?
Well, I mean, I think it comes back down to like just what we were talking about, like what interests you. And I guess, for folks perhaps who've gone through, who are listening, who are probably, maybe in their 30s or 40s or 50s, who have been in relationships or had children or have dedicated their lives to their careers, or, a lot of people who are really invested in doing the right thing.
Right.
often they get to this age in their 40s, 50s, whatever, where they start to get this gnawing kind of stirring feeling of, is that all there is? And it's not that they don't love their spouse anymore necessarily, or that anything is wrong in particular necessarily. But there's this sense of, is that all? And I think sometimes that can be a calling into, how do you want the second half of your life to look? Like
Yeah.
what were, from the highlights reel of the first half, what were some of the things that were fabulous? And what was it about those things that were fabulous that gives you insight into what matters to you? So not necessarily replicating the exact event,
Right.
but more chasing the feelings, So I talk about this with my clients who are struggling with libido is, and they're like, well, what position is going to get me the most turned on? I'm like, let's not even have that
No.
discussion, because that, especially with penis and vagina sex, doesn't work. It's much more important to identify, how do you want sex to make you feel? And what I mean by that is not feel like, do I want to feel horny? Do I want to feel wet? Do I want to feel, a physical sensation? I'm talking more about an emotional sensation. So such as, I want to feel free. I want to feel unburdened. I want to feel desired. I want to feel, I want to feel dirty. I want to feel like a princess. I want to feel slutty. I want, like, whatever it is.
Right.
And then, so working backwards from there. So what kinds of activities have you done in your life that have made you feel like that, sexual or otherwise? Because I think when we get so tripped up on, what are the positions, or what are the, fingering techniques that are going to make me feel a certain way, that just reduces our ability to understand sex and pleasure and, largely the erotic, when we just reduce sex down to a series of thrusts and, fingering
Yeah.
techniques. That's not enough, especially
No.
for people who are older.
Mhm.
That's really boring for a lot of people.
Sex is the action and eroticism is the experience.
Right. And that's so in my book, and I talk about, eroticism is sex with the mind switched on. Like, you're actually paying attention to what's happening, not just in your body, but what's happening cerebrally, what's happening emotionally, what's happening, where are you going, what parts of you are coming to life, you know? And so when people are like, how do I discover what my eroticism is? Yes, I mean, you can access it through fantasies, maybe. But if you're not particularly wired towards sexual fantasies, which a lot of, especially heterosexual women, are, it's not that they're not, but how it shows up, it might tend to show up a bit more as a romantic fantasy, but often it's very emotion driven. It's very much about, some strapping dude makes her feel a certain way.
Right.
It's, he might have nice shoulders or long hair or whatever,
Right.
but it's not so much the how he looks physically. It'll often be more about how she feels in his presence. That is the thing that often drives a lot of women's fantasies. And actually, I would argue that's probably true for straight men as well. Even if they might be more, quote unquote, visually oriented,
Right.
they are still, chasing the big boobs or the big bum or the big whatever or the small whatever, because of how it makes them feel about their own bodies. It's rarely about this external thing of giving a shit about the other person. I think our
Right.
fantasies can tend to be very kind of self-absorbed and narcissistic, which is fine. That's what they should be. But it speaks to the parts of us that need attention, that are calling for some kind of acknowledgement. So, and again, like, this is my interpretation. It's a very cerebral interpretation. But I do think it gives us the opportunity to dig into sex beyond a series of moves and performance techniques and chasing orgasms that may or may not even be fulfilling. Like,
Right.
Again, for a lot of women, partnered sex with men or women, if you're into, partnered with whatever genders, a lot of, when I speak to women who have partnered sex and I ask them why they have sex, they very rarely say to have an orgasm,
Yeah.
almost never. almost never. Yet the mainstream narrative is if you haven't had an orgasm, the sex is not successful. And that's complete bullshit. When you speak to a lot of women, and actually men too, but a lot of women don't have partnered sex to have an orgasm. A lot of the time they have partnered sex to, and this is me paraphrasing, but generally what they will tell me is they will be accessing a part of themselves that they cannot get to by themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is very, very arousing. And so for people who have sex with women, especially men, it is very helpful for them to know that, because then it doesn't matter about the size of their dick and how long they last and all of these things. If the man is not present to her and able to facilitate a journey for her to go on a ride into herself where he is the host of that journey, and if he's worrying about, is his dick big enough? Is it lasting long enough? Is it this? Is it that? And he's completely absent to her emotionally, she is not going to have the erotic experience she is looking for, because she's not just there for the dick. She is there to be taken on a ride. And if you're not taking her there, she's not going to get what she wants. And this is a lot of the thing when I'm working with couples, is helping people understand this, that there is something else going on. And tips and tricks and vibrators and lubes are fine. But at the end of the day, that is, people can do that by themselves.
Yes.
You can, if you just want to have an orgasm, which is very important, just do it by yourself.
Yeah.
It's not, don't drag someone else into that, mediocrity.
Right.
Just do it by yourself, get it sorted out. And then when you're having partnered sex, really get into it with somebody and go, where do we want this to go? Like, how are we going to make this memorable?
Yes, it's focusing on the experience, I think, for both people.
Uh-huh.
And I think also, especially heterosexual men need to learn that it is for them as well. What a gift to go through that and have that journey, to take someone on that one and have her or him or whoever take them on a journey as well. It makes it so much more interesting.
That's right. And I mean, a lot of men will say, if you ask straight men what turns them on, they'll say, oh, well, when my partner is having a great time, that turns me on. And I'm like, okay, great. And then I'll say, so tell me what turns your partner on. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I do this thing with my fingers. And I'm like, yeah, not that though.
Yeah.
And he's like, but she gets wet. And I'm like, yeah, but what turns her on? Like, has she said to you, this turns me on? And he's like, but she gets wet. I'm like, you're not hearing what I'm saying. Because a lot of straight men especially will associate physical arousal, so wetness, engorgement, all that stuff, they will associate that with desire, or they will associate that with successful sex. And when you ask women what turns them on, they very rarely will say, oh, magic finger tricks. Like, sometimes they do, but a lot of the time it's like, oh, it's when he, when I feel his intensity, when I feel his, strength, when I feel his, not even his dick, when I feel his presence.
Yeah.
And then the guys are like, oh, but when I do that thing with my fingers, and mate, like, you're not listening, because the men are so conditioned.
They're conditioned
to put their imprint of sex onto the experience of their wives and girlfriends, and then wonder why the women are like, I do a better job by myself.
Yeah. Well, you just actually went into the next question that I had, so I'm going to skip over it.
Oh, all right.
What are some of the unexpected ways erotic connection can change over time for both genders and non-binary folks?
I think when it becomes less focused on tips and tricks, when sex becomes less about pulling off a technique. And I mean, I don't want to say that technique is not important. To a degree, it matters, because if sex is painful or boring or unpleasant, then you're not going to want to do it, obviously. So, yes, technique matters. But the difference between, okay sex, where you may or may not have an orgasm, and sex that's really memorable, is how you felt. And so when I ask my clients to think about, their top 3 memorable sexcapades in their life, generally people will not describe positions or what they did, or what lube they used, or what color the sheets were. Like, generally people don't, that's not what makes sex memorable. They will often describe a very rich and visceral memory of how they felt, what was happening for them internally. I was so turned on. I was so engaged. I was so present. I was thinking about, no, all of the squirrels in my head were silent all of a sudden. And I was entirely focused on whatever the thing was. That, and people will then describe, that type of sex as almost mystical, like it's almost, touched by God, all these kinds of phrases that people will use to describe this kind of otherworldly sex. It's almost like all of the burdensome aspects of being on the earthly plane
Melts
disappear,
away. Yeah.
for, maybe only 3 or 4 seconds. But for that moment, they are completely in another realm. And so I think, as time changes, when people are younger in their teens and 20s, they're just trying to, get the rhythm of sex. They want to be good at the physical aspect
Right.
of it because it's a series of tricks and whatever. And you haven't been on the planet long enough to know about your inner machinations in your teens and early 20s. And I think when folks get older, part of the reason I think that so much of the research says that people have, better sex in their 50s and 60s is because they give less fucks about all of the social blah, blah.
And they know what works and what doesn't.
Right, and like boob size, dick size, duration, all of that stuff goes out the window. It doesn't matter anymore. And it's more about, am I going to have a quality connection with this person or these people? Or, like so many swinger groups of people over 50 because they're, nudist colonies tend to be older people. Like it's people who are just like, I don't care if my pubes are gray and my bum is saggy and my whatevers are hanging down. It's like, I just want to have a good time, and that is so, and I think that that's really where sex changes for people. And this is across the gender spectrum.
Yeah.
You have less fucks to give and you can make an intentional, deliberate decision to say, I want to spend the next 10, 20, whatever, how many years I've got left really having a good time and focusing on the stuff that brings me pleasure, that brings me joy, and not trying to, lose another 10 pounds. And
right. It's boring.
All right. Like,
I mean, whatever floats your boat. But
right.
oh, shoot, I just had it and now it's gone. But I'm also wanted to say, too, that we're not just talking about connection with someone that you know really well. We're talking about connection that you can make on field with somebody.
You're right. You can have a connection with somebody on a first meeting. I mean, I have recently had this experience and it's, I mean, sometimes it happens with repeat, encounters. Absolutely, you can do it. And then sometimes there are people you meet and it's just instant and it's like, oh my goodness, this is fantastic. But I think sometimes that can happen because of chemistry, but also I think sometimes it can happen when people are really good communicators and you feel their intentionality in how they speak to you, or even more so how they listen to you.
Yes.
Listening, I think, is like 70% of communication. And so many people forget that. They think communication is talking and everyone's like talking and no one's listening. And then you're like, why aren't we connecting? And this connection can be, it doesn't have to be heavy, but it can just be someone's presence that makes you feel, I mean, I'm loath to use the word safe because I think it's
curiosity.
overused.
Curiosity. Listening with curiosity.
There's just a presence that someone has that makes you want to lean in, not to pull away. And that you feel nourished at the end of the encounter. You don't feel depleted at the end of the encounter. I think that that's a crucial thing. But that said, sometimes some people develop connection over lots of meetings over time.
Right.
So, a 20-year marriage is not necessarily more intimate than a holiday fling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's about what you bring to the connection. And goodness knows there are 20-year marriages where people checked out 15 years ago.
Yeah. I remember having an experience with someone I met on field, and just a really great guy. And I got a good feeling from him. We met. But one of the things he did that made me feel so comfortable with him was he actually looked at me and said, is it okay if I touch you here? Is there any place on your body you don't want me to touch? And just that simple question of caring about what I thought about my own body, about thinking ahead of time about how I would feel if someone else touched that part, made me feel emotionally safe to the extent that I needed to be in order to have a good time, in order to be able to connect with him while we were having sex. And that's one of my favorite sexual experiences, because it wasn't about the orgasm that I had. I don't even remember if I had one, to be perfectly honest. It wasn't about anything else. It was, I felt the best in that moment because I didn't have to think about anything else, because I figured he was thinking about it. He was thinking about the things I was thinking about and was caring about how I felt.
Yeah. And that makes me think of, this thing about people remembering how they felt an especially memorable erotic experience rather than what they did. So even though in the case of this guy, it was a thing that he did. He did a thing.
Yeah.
He said, is it okay if I touch you here? So that was about an action, but what it was the process of asking about it, engaging in a conversation about it. And that's the thing that you remember because of how it made you feel.
Yes.
So again, it comes back to this feeling state.
Yep.
This is such a driver for people, that sex is so much about how we feel emotionally. And when we pretend that sex is not emotional, and we pretend it's, just this conquest thing, or, not just in a bedpost, or all this stuff that, I think perhaps less so these days. People are a little bit more attuned to such things. But there can still be a somewhat, especially with the apps, a cavalier attitude to, it's just sex. It doesn't matter. Especially, riding on the back of what was the 2000 sex positivity movement, like have lots of sex with lots of people and nothing matters anymore. It's sort of come full circle again now, back to people being very intentional, perhaps too much. But it still comes down to this thing of, we remember how we feel in the company of others. And that applies to sex too, especially when you got your pants off.
Yeah.
It really makes such a difference.
It's the Maya Angelou quote of, people won't necessarily remember what you did, but they remember how you make them feel. And I think at the end of the day, eroticism does come down to that.
Yeah.
How are you feeling in the moment? And what is it that it can't be defined that is either turning you on or making you feel in your body, or making you feel sparked or euphoric or interested or curious? I think that's the great thing about eroticism, is that there's no definition, and yet everybody can feel it when they tune into it.
Yeah, well, maybe that's that thing. It's hard to describe, but you know it when you feel it.
That's right, like art.
That's right, like art. Or like, what is
like
it?
Porn.
Who said that about porn? Like,
porn.
You can't describe it, but you know it when you see it.
When you see it, yes. God, who was that? I want to say
Bill Clinton?
No, certainly wasn't him. Oh, you're Australian. I want to say it was like John Waters or Buckminster Fuller.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm pulling that out of my ass.
Definitely not Bill Clinton. Wasn't Barack Obama.
No, it's
all right.
Predates. Right. Well, thank you, Cyndi.
Oh, you're welcome.
I would love to have you come on again and get in the weeds with me about stuff. Because
all right. Let's weed up.
Let's weed up, wife. That's right. Well, thanks to everybody for joining in, and we'll see you next time on The Reveal. You can find Cyndi at CyndiDarnell.com. That's Cyndi, Cyndi, Darnell with 2 L's.com. Or on Instagram and the TikTok at Cyndi_Darnell, and on Facebook at Cyndi Darnell Page. Don't forget her book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, The Truth About Mismatched Libido and Rediscovering Desire, at CyndiDarnell.com/book, or wherever books are sold. Thanks for listening to The Reveal. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it too. And if you'd like to stay connected, head to ElleChase.com to join the mailing list for updates, the Substack version of The Reveal, and early access to new episodes. You can also follow The Reveal wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have a moment, leaving a review helps others find the show. Email for the show can be sent to therevealmail@gmail.com. And of course, if you're on the social medias, I'm at the Elle Chase on all platforms. Until next time, stay curious and remember, the most powerful stories are the ones we dare to tell.